final 25 minutes of the game, and it came against a team that finished 17th in the conference and won't play in the Big Ten tournament. Badgers have all lost 3 of 5 heading into the postseason. Coach Greg Gardner's time is running out for them to turn it around.
We'll learn from evaluate them the same. So there's going to be, I'm sure, a lot of teaching from this. And like I told them, we're lucky we get to play again. But from here on out, we play like this, you won't play long. So we know how good we can be, but we've got to be able to respond from this.
Wisconsin is the number 5 seed in the tournament. They're going to face the winner of Minnesota and Northwestern on Thursday down in Indy. If they win that, they will face 4th seeded UCLA on Friday in the quarterfinals.
When a company only does business in Wisconsin, that's Wisconsin Strong. Rural Mutual provides all lines of insurance, including commercial, farm, home, and auto. And your premiums stay right here to keep Wisconsin strong. Local agents, local underwriters, local claims adjusters.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Well, the Packers are on the board in free agency. The team has reportedly agreed to a 4-year, $77 million deal with 49ers guard Aaron Banks and a 4-year, $48 million deal with Raiders cornerback Nate Hobbs. The team also saw their own defensive tackle, TJ Slayton, agree to a deal with Cincinnati. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heil, Print.
There is another bag, this one being dropped in Green Bay, Wisconsin. The top guard is now off the market. 49ers guard Aaron Banks is expected to sign with the Packers as quarterback Jordan Love gets another bodyguard, says Rap Sheet. Aaron Banks to the Packers. Packers making a play on first day of free agency. I know Ty is somewhere excited about this move. AJ, how do you feel?
I like them getting on the board here. Like you said, like Rap Sheet says, the top guard off the market. Yeah, why not? I mean, Green Bay is set up for success for a long time if you think about it. If they could just keep Jordan Love upright, keep him healthy, the defense continues to get better and better. The Packers are looking good, I think.
Always focused on versatility with our offensive linemen, whether it be because of injury or because we have players that leave. We feel really good about the flexibility of our guys to play multiple spots and try to get the best 5 on the field. So I feel really good about our group right now.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
That's Brian Gutekunst from the Combine saying, I feel really good about our group right now. Talking about his offensive line, which couldn't have been that true because they just spent $80 million on a guard today. What the hell's his name? I already forgot it. Jordan Banks? Aaron Banks. That's right. Aaron Banks. They also signed a corner, as Zach mentioned in the update, whose name I forgot. I heard it 5 seconds ago. Of course, Nate Hobbs. Who wouldn't know Nate Hobbs? Household name from the Raiders. So a guard and a corner in free agency, both within the last hour or two, later on as legal tampering begins. Packers fans, how do you feel about that? Let's discuss. Let's get into this a little bit. This is the Wisco Sports Show. My name is Grant Bills. I hope you had a great weekend. Not a great basketball weekend, really, for any team at any level of the state. The Badgers dumped their pants against Penn State. Marquette blows it at the end of St. John's. And if you're interested in such things, oh my God, did Platteville blow it at home on Friday night to Wisconsin Lutheran, which maybe was the most shocking result of the weekend, but certainly the result that the fewest people care about. It just, I throw it on the pile. A very busy sports weekend, culminating today with what the Packers have been doing. And that's where I imagine we'll spend most of our time on tonight's show. And I would love to take your calls, 608-321-1670. I will come to you in the first segment in 5 or 6 minutes. If you're ready, I would imagine we're going to have lots of impassioned, emboldened Packers fans who will have something to say about these two signings. So we're going to have a caller-heavy show tonight. And we will talk about these signings right up until 6 o'clock if you have things to say. Let's start with Nate Banks, Josh Banks. What the hell's his name? Aaron Banks, of course, spelled Aaron. Yes, Aaron Banks. I will remember that by 6 o'clock. So I'm never going to fault a general manager for investing in O-line, right? You take a draft pick and use it on an offensive lineman. Hard to fault the GM because we will be the first person to stand up, whether it's fans or media. Everyone loves to demonize a general manager who neglects the O-line. So I think it's unfair to turn around and criticize a general manager when they invest in the O-line. Okay. The Packers signed a cornerback, Nate Hobbs. I think they need a depth at corner. This maybe wouldn't be how I would have addressed corner. I probably would have used a draft pick, but it's hard to say that, like, the Packers got better, okay? Like, these are two solid players. They will help the Packers win in 2025 and beyond. But again, starting with Aaron Banks in the O-line, I think we've been discussing the Packers' needs over the last couple of weeks preparing for free agency. And it's been wide receiver and the defensive line plus edge rusher, front seven, put it that way. Somebody either in the interior of the defensive line or in the edge as an outside linebacker, right? A defensive end. I think wide receiver and pressure on the opposing quarterback, far and away the biggest needs for the Packers. And I thought the best positions on which to spend free agency dollars, because it's not that they need wide receiver depth. It's not that they need defensive line or trench depth. They need a game breaker. They need a star. One star wide receiver like DK Metcalf, or one star edge rusher like Trey Hendrickson or Milton Williams. That's what you needed. And free agency is the perfect place to get a player like that right away. You can draft a player that would turn into a game breaker. It's probably not going to happen right away unless you strike gold on a player like Jared Verse, or you use a top 10 pick on a wide receiver, which the Packers don't have. And still, even if you take a wide receiver in the top 5 or the top 10, nothing is guaranteed, especially right away. That's the nature of the draft, right? The offensive line was arguably the Packers' biggest position of strength last year. And of course, I'm talking about the unit as a whole. There were better and worse players on the O-line, but I think if you took cornerbacks, set them over here, linebackers, set them here, right? O-line here, pass rush here, wide receiver. If you were just to look at all of the individual position groups of the Packers, you make a pretty good argument that the offensive line was their best position group last year. I went to Ben Baldwin's Twitter because he's really good at this. I don't know if he still writes at The Athletic. He's not really active on Twitter anymore, but I'll go when we take our first call or whenever I have a second, I'll make sure that if you want to go find his work, I'll get you the website, or I'll get you at least he's on Twitter at Ben B. Baldwin, and he's got links to all his work there. I saved this graphic because my mind immediately went here when they signed, what the hell's his name? Aaron Banks. This is a graphic, and if you're listening on the radio and not watching the live stream, which is probably most of you, I'll do my best to explain what the graphic illustrates. But this graphic shows here that on one axis, run blocking, on another axis, pass blocking, okay? The Packers were better than every team not named the Broncos and the Bucks at pass protecting. The Packers were outstanding at keeping Jordan upright last year, Jordan Love. They were outstanding at protecting him, creating a pocket around him, and giving him time to throw. Jordan Love was as comfortable in the pocket as any quarterback in the NFL last year. The Packers, again, were better in pass protection than every team not named the Broncos and not named the Buccaneers. And you can see that on the graph. The Packers on the y-axis, up and down, are lower than just those two teams and only those two teams. Now, they weren't as great at run blocking, but they're still in the top third or top quarter of the league. The only teams better at run blocking, and we're looking at composite grades. This is data from Ben Baldwin. The only teams that were better at run blocking than the Packers were the Cardinals, Eagles, Chiefs, Lions, Niners, Ravens, Colts, Rams. So again, there are a couple of teams, but the Packers were outstanding, among the best in the league at pass pro, and they were in the upper third, upper quarter in run blocking as well. Their offensive line was tremendous, right? I'll give you another graphic here. And again, this one's from Ben Baldwin as well. If you're watching on the live stream, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, at Wisco Grant, you can see this very clearly. The Packers in pass protection on offense, all the way towards the right side of the graphic. They were above an 80 for a PFF grade. Again, right there with the Bucks and only behind the Broncos. Run blocking on offense, if you're just looking at PFF grade, the Packers are a little bit more middle of the pack, but they weren't bad. They weren't awful at run blocking. They just weren't as good as they were pass protecting, which should be hard to do because they were outstanding in pass protection. One more, and this is a graphic that I bookmarked in the season. It was easy for me to go back and find. Ben Baldwin and others, and I just use him as a resource for data because he's really good at organizing these things, right? This spreadsheet that we're looking at now takes together the tackle, the guard, the center, average all of their true pass sets. They were better than everyone except the Broncos on average. The Packers were tremendous. So for all the people, Packers fans, media members, whoever, celebrating this signing, and again, they got better. He's a fine offensive lineman. It's always good to have more offensive line help. It's always good, of course, right? But the people who say, well, you got to keep Jordan Love upright. You got to protect Jordan Love. They did. They were protecting him. That was far from their biggest issue last year. It was arguably their biggest position of strength. So to go out and spend nearly $80 million on a guard, it's not my favorite thing in the world. The O-line wasn't their weakness last year. And even had it been their biggest weakness, I probably wouldn't have addressed it like this. Probably would have drafted. The Packers are outstanding at drafting offensive line, bringing them along, which is why, we're going to lose Josh Myers in free agency. Great. That's what Jacob Monk is there for. That's what Jordan Morgan is waiting in the wings for. I thought they drafted Jordan Morgan so they didn't have to pay an interior lineman $80 million. And I understand it's not going to shake out to $80 million. But when I belly ached a little bit about this signing on Twitter earlier today, again, at Wisco Grant, there's so many people who's like, $77 million. Wait for the real number to come out. Okay, well, what are they paying? $8 an hour? What's the real number going to be? Is the real number going to be that drastically different? They signed, 4 years, $77 million? And all these Packers fans online are like, wait for the real numbers, as if they're going to be paying him minimum wage. Like, no, the real numbers are also going to be a lot. It's going to be front-loaded, and it's only going to be guaranteed in the first year because that's how the Packers do their contracts. Duh. But it's still a fat contract. It's still a huge investment at a position that I don't love investing in, interior offensive linemen, right? The Packers are the team that lets their interior linemen go to let the other dumb teams throw a bunch of money at him. The Packers are the team that lets John Runyon Jr. go sign for big money elsewhere. They don't sign John Runyon Jr. for big money. They let those guys leave because they're so good at drafting and developing and always have those guys in the ready. And that would be true if they hadn't spent a first-round pick on an offensive lineman last year, but they did. I thought the Jordan Morgan pick was insulation. I thought that was protection from ever having to worry. I thought when you pick players like Jordan Morgan in the first round, even when you don't need a player like Jordan Morgan in the first round that year, that you're protected from needing to spend $75 million on an interior offensive lineman. The O-line, again, far from their biggest weakness last year. In fact, I would argue it was their biggest strength. And yet that's where they spent their money today. This is like the Brewers spending their money on a reliever. Like, yeah, okay, I like having good players. I just don't think it's a wise investment, and it's not the position or the positional group that I would have invested in. The corner, I think I'm a little bit on the outside. I thought that they would have been fine just throwing a 3rd and a 6th round pick at corner and calling it a day, right? Because so many people have told me they love Javon Bullard. He's going to be their slot. Okay, well then where does Nate Hobbs slot? Because he's bigger and more physical, so he projects now to be their slot. So what? Again, they're good players. They'll help the Packers win. It's more depth. I'm not anti-good player. I'm not anti my team investing. I just would have invested in different players at different positions, like wide receiver. There was a big problem down the stretch last year. Or pass rush, which was not just a problem. That group was non-existent. All right, I'll take your calls. I imagine Packers fans are going to be fired up, so I'll take your calls, take your thoughts. Really, from now until 6 o'clock, we'll be talking about this. 608-321-1670, Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Grant Bills, happy Monday. How are we doing?
Vagabond John, I am well. How are you?
I'm good. Hey, I like your commentary on the Banks signing. I do think you're missing the biggest thing for me.
Okay.
And that is, if this guy was a guard that didn't miss any time over the last 3 seasons, I'd be all in, right?
Okay.
But my worry is we actually signed a guy who missed 4 games last year with a bad knee. And you go to the year before that, he missed a couple of games with a bad knee. And so if this was a guy with a clean bill of health, I'd be fired up to fight you today. Right. And I did a little research before the show started, and I saw that this dude's been injured a bunch. So he's 27. He came into the NFL at the age of 24. So I went from 15 minutes ago loving the signing to now scratching my head. Absolutely. What the hell is this? Because he came in so old, right? He didn't play in the NFL until he was 24 years old, and he's been injured, and we just gave him a bag. So, well, he's not as high paid as people say because, we've been talking about this for weeks. The cap's going up. He's not going to be in the top 10 paid interior offensive lineman come August, right? He's not a top of the league pay guy. The number that they gave him is going to look a lot smaller in August than it does now. But you just bought injured goods. What the hell are we doing here? Especially in the offensive line. Haven't we learned anything, Brent?
I think I have. I like the way that the Packers draft and develop O-line and bring them along, and they have a real skill for training them to be flexible, so they have lots of options. Again, I thought the whole idea of the way that the Packers handle O-line was designed to avoid having to pay this much money for especially an interior player. And for all the people because I was belly aching a little bit on Twitter this afternoon, and I had one person in my mentions like, well, they paid this guy, so then they would have an option at guard, so then Jordan Morgan could play tackle, and then you avoid paying Rasheed Walker. It's like, wait, so we overpaid a guard to avoid overpaying a tackle? It's like the old lady that swallowed the fly. It's the old Gudikins who threw my... I'm not making that analogy. You get what I'm trying to say. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Grant, it's Mike from Portage.
What's going on, Mike? What do you think?
You're going to be shocked when I say this, but I agree with you 100% on what's Aaron what again? Aaron what?
Aaron, good God. Aaron Banks.
Aaron Banks. That's it. The analogy was the guy the kid from Mighty Ducks, Adam Banks, Aaron Banks instead.
Okay.
That's right. I remember. But anyway, yeah, the guy has knee problems. Vagabond is right. You're right. We needed to solidify the defensive line, the pass rush, the secondary, and wide receiver. Offensive line is great. What are we going to do with Jordan Morgan? Is he that bad that they don't want to start him? He's a first-round draft pick.
I don't know.
He should be starting the second year.
I don't know what their plan is for Jordan Morgan. Mike, that's a good call. We're just going to operate at a little higher clip today. I don't know. I don't know what plan they have for Jordan Morgan. I'm sure they have some sort of plan. I liked the plan a lot better when it was, slide Elton Jenkins over to center and then play Jordan Morgan at guard, and then Rasheed Walker and Zach Tom remain your tackles. But the Packers see it differently, obviously. Nate Hobbs, by the way, you talk about injuries. Nate Hobbs has played 11, 13, and 11 games the last 3 years. What is that? 17 combined missed games the last 3 seasons? I mean, it could be worse. It could also be a lot better. Injuries are also fluky. I get it. They're part of the game. But I don't know. Maybe I'm being pessimistic. I think the problem is the Packers sat this complete first wave out, and I had to watch DK Metcalf, Devontae Adams, Khalil Mack, Milton Williams, DJ Reed, Paulson Adebo go off the board and to rivals, to teams that the Packers are competing with. So I got all hot and bothered and ticked off, and I was ready to rip the Packers. And then they signed these two guys, so I'm already kind of in the mindset to rip them, but there's also things about both of these signings that I don't really love. They're fine players. They'll help the Packers. I'm not against the Packers investing. I just would have invested differently. Let's take another call. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Denny from Holman.
Denny, what do you think about this?
Bango, you hit it 100% on the head. What Gouda can't or Gouda won't, I mean, come on. We're talking about, he was talking about lip service with all the, old Adams and then old Metcalf and then, and it's like, it's just every year there's always a few receivers like that. Look at Trey Hendrickson, they were talking. I mean,
by the way, Denny, I'm not convinced. I've just been asking around. Part of me thinks the Packers are sneaky still in on Hendrickson. I think Walker, I'm not saying they're shopping Walker, but right. I've talked to certain people and heard certain things that maybe Walker could be a part of a trade that could then bring in a piece at a position they actually need, and then they slide around the O-line. I don't know.
And talking about trades, hey, I don't like what I hear about Malik Willis. I mean, our quarterback's not 100% injury pro or non, and it's like, what are we doing? I mean, why would you get a good guy that, like I said, if he love goes down again, I mean, there you are again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I wanted to say this about Saturday. When Penn State went into that zone defense, Wisconsin had no movement with the ball. They were way out by the perimeter, and they waited till the clock got down to almost 0 and a late desperation 3. And I mean, Wisconsin never plays a zone, and guard is just too stubborn to play it.
Well, they have. We've seen it. I don't think defense is their problem. This team just needs to score at a higher clip, and part of that is shooting. Tanjay also can't play like AJ Storr, or the season's going to come to a much earlier end than we were previously thinking maybe a week or two ago. One more call, and then we're going to take a break. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Mike at Eau Claire.
What do you think, Mike?
Trey Hendrickson, I would pay him $120 million for 4 years.
So 30 for 4 years. Is that about what it would shake out to be?
Whatever it takes, because he's going to make our defensive linemen are good, but we need that guy.
I agree.
To make the other defensive line. We're not going to get Aaron Donald. He's retired. We need that to make the other defensive linemen good. And then that makes all the D-backs and the linebackers that much better. That is what we need. That is way more. What say you? Receiver or D lineman? We need a D lineman, in my opinion. We can sacrifice the receiver position. I don't know, but we need that D lineman, and that will really solidify what we're doing.
Yeah, I would agree. Defense or not defense, defensive line or wide receiver. That's where I wanted to see them spend capital and free agency or in a trade, because I think one veteran along the defensive line makes everyone else better. That solves it. One veteran at wide receiver makes everyone else better. That solves it. That's not necessarily solvable in the draft unless you hit a home run like Jared Verse, or, there's not a ton of rookie receivers that are good wall to wall. It's Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. Packers aren't going to get one of those guys. Now, I actually think, and we've talked about this, that this year it lines up maybe better than any in the past couple for the Packers to potentially take a wide receiver in the first round. That would make a lot of sense, but that's months down the road. We're talking about what happened today, and the Packers spent big money on a guard and a corner, two positions that were mostly pretty good last year. The O-line, I think, was their best position on the field, and corner was fine. You could have addressed corner and interior line, especially with a couple of draft picks, and they choose to kind of blow their free agency cash wad on both positions. I don't really love it. We'll continue next. 3 more minutes or 3 minutes of break, and then we're back to your phone calls right away. 608-321-1670.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
I think, for us, we talked a little bit about the versatility of it. But no, I think, that those 5 guys are a unit, and they got to be able to work together as a unit. So certainly your coaching staff is incredibly important. Those guys playing together and having the reps together is incredibly important. But the communication and all that. But I think they just, when we've had great offensive lines in the past, our group now, like I think it's it's kind of an unselfish group that communicates well, and again, I can't overstate how important the coaching aspect of that is as well.
That's Brian Gutekunst at the Combine when asked about what makes a good O-line. I'm just going back and I'm finding any commentary from Goody about O-line and drafting O-line and building an O-line. And he was just singing the praises of his O-line at the Combine. I couldn't have felt that great about it because he spent $80 million on a guard. And I know they're not going to pay him $80 million. But Packers fans on Twitter, they're like, well, let's wait to see what the real numbers are. Like the reported is 4 for 77 and the real number is going to be minimum wage. Like, no, they paid him a lot of money. What the exact details are, of course, we'll wait to see those. But they made a big investment in a guard, which I don't really love because the O-line was their best unit of the season last year. And they signed a corner, which I like, but I just would have been happy throwing a 3rd and a 6th round pick at the cornerback position, calling it good. Well, this guy can play the slot corner. Okay, well then what's Javon Bullard doing here? Like, I don't know. I'm sure things will start to make sense. They'll fall into place. I'm just struggling to see it right now. And while I'm never going to complain about my team investing, I just would have invested in different positions, in different things. Your thoughts, 608-321-1670. Back to the calls. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Grant, it's Cone. Just getting into San Diego, California. Heard the news about signing Aaron Banks, whatever his name is. I think this is going to be another thing where, like, it's part of Gutekunst's 5-year plan now that comes out of, thin air, like the Domofsky report.
I see.
So I hate it. I agree with everything you're saying. The callers are saying, what's the point of drafting Jordan Morgan? Really?
That's what I'm missing is I don't mind the Packers drafting a lineman early when they don't necessarily need him because it's important. Duh. But I thought that taking extra O-linemen, that's the insurance policy you pay to not have to go out in free agency and spend $80 million on a guard. That's why that it doesn't really make sense. You know what I mean? You drafted an O-lineman last year and now you go out and sign. Like I'm just missing the connection there.
Yeah. And like that said, injury, he's got a bad knee. Jordan Morgan sat out his whole rookie year. I don't know. I think we're kind of investing in some, bruised apples. So we'll see.
We'll see. 17 missed games over the last 3 years for Nate Hobbs as well. The corner they signed. Appreciate it, Cone. That's a good call. Thanks for taking us with you when you're on the road. I know Cone's a traveling salesman, I believe, in the Southwest in Phoenix, but on the 10, on the 60, on the 101, the 202, all those highways. I'm not complaining about my team investing. It's good to invest. And I'm not complaining about them building up the line, but they're so good at doing it through the draft. This would be like the Brewers going out and spending big money on a reliever. And I don't mean to cross sports because sometimes sports, they're not comparable, but the Brewers only have so much money to spend. So you really got to be picky and choose to be out where you spend it. They're great at developing relievers. Why would we go pay for a reliever when those are fluky anyways? The Packers, they're not as limited as the Brewers are, but they're limited in a different sense in that you maybe have 1 or 2 bullets every offseason to fire in free agency. And this offseason is one of those because they're kind of out of the salary cap pressure that was left behind by Rodgers and Bakhtiari and others. I thought that money, edge rusher, wide receiver, you need those more. It was apparent down the stretch last year. And they double down on a strength. And at corner, okay, they could use a corner, but their defense wasn't that bad last year. They just couldn't rush the passer. So fix that thing. I'm not telling you to ignore everything else, but let's place weight on different positions. Let's prioritize a little bit. You know what I mean? Prioritize pass rush. The defense as a whole was the better unit at the end of the season last season. It was the pass rush specifically. That's where a veteran could be really useful. I think you're fine with a couple of draft picks at corner, but maybe I'm in the minority there. All right, another call. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Okay, Grant Jones. Evidently, you're one of those owners that wants to be a GM as well.
Is this Rockin' Rick?
It is. Yeah, just relax. The last time we took a corner from the Raiders for 1 year, he was the best returner in all football.
I suppose. And didn't Charles Woodson come from the Raiders once upon a time too, or did he have a stop in between there? I can't remember.
I don't remember either.
I can't even remember this guy's name. It's something Hobbs, Nate Hobbs, I think.
Yeah. I just wanted to give you a little crap because you were sounding like Jerry Jones there. I know that you're an owner and everything. So
I am an owner. The thing is, I also host a radio show. Appreciate it, Rockin' Rick. What I'm not going to do is come on here today and go, and Goody retrust. We'll see what the plan is. Like, no, they made 2 signings today. We're going to react to those signings. And I think their offensive line is better. I mean, Jesus, it should be better. You spent $80 million on a guard. I just don't think that's efficient use of resources. And corner, again, I'm with Ryan Wood, and I played you his comment from Bill's show last week. Like, throw a couple draft picks at corner, get some depth, get some youth, kind of reset the clock underneath at least at that position and move on. Veteran wide receiver, veteran edge rusher, that's where I was looking, which is why we've spent how many hours over the last 2 weeks talking about DK Metcalf and Devontae Adams and Khalil Mack and Milton Williams. I'm fine that they didn't get Paulson Adebo or DJ Reed. I don't love that DJ Reed went to Detroit. I'm fine that they didn't spend big on a free agent corner until they spent, I wouldn't say they spent huge, but they spent on Nate Hobbs from Vegas, from the Raiders. Yeah, 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Grant, it's Ryan.
Hey.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. What do you think about all this?
I love both signings, man. I'm going to have to disagree with you. The thing about signing Aaron Banks is that he's been a reliable starter. He had a noticeable uptick and improvement in his play last year. And while it is a lot of money for a guard, his run blocking is premier in this league.
So, and that's probably something that I should add. Like, that's probably part of the Packers thinking. They need another road grader or two. So maybe this could, Ryan, do you think this marks a change in how they're approaching O-line? They're like, well, now with Jordan Love and Josh Jacobs, we're becoming a little bit more of a power outfit compared to where we've been the last, I don't know, however many years with Rodgers, where they're leaner, more mobile, more versatile. Maybe they just wanted a pure road grader, and this signals a little bit of a change in the way they want to align and build their front.
You could be onto something there. I was just going to say, too, as far as Nate Hobbs goes, he is an amazing character player, and there are many Raiders fans posting about how he's one of their favorite players because, well, not only of how he plays, he's always in the mix to make plays, and he's a good tackler, and as I said, he's a great character individual, and there's something to be said, I think, for having experienced corners versus experienced pass rushers in free agency. I mean, it's going to cost less to sign corners.
Sure.
I think if they would have had a chance to sign Odeyingbo from the Colts, they would have done that, but the Bears poached him first.
Well, and that's another thing is a lot of these pass rushers went to the Bears, the Lions. The Lions got a good corner too. Lions got a better corner than the Packers did. In my opinion, at least. They got DJ Reed, who I didn't really need the Packers to sign, but I also didn't want them to spend money on a corner. Just draft a couple, call it a day.
Right. I don't think Goody would have ever considered him at 5'9", though, if I'm being honest. Maybe I'm wrong about
DJ
that.
Reed, you mean specifically?
Yeah, DJ Reed. I mean, Keyshawn Nixon is short too, but I don't think he's that short, if my memory serves. I think they're gonna spend 2 picks in the draft on edge rusher unless they make a move between now and then to trade for a guy that, we obviously haven't seen happen yet.
I think, and that's a great call, Ryan, and I appreciate all of you because sometimes we chat and we yuck it up. I appreciate on a day like today when we have some breaking news, get your points out quick so we can get as many people in as possible. Appreciate it, Ryan. Nate Hobbs is physical specimen. He's bigger, right? They can play him in the slot. He's played boundary. Like, he gives them a nice chess piece. All right, fine. Drafting of the edge rusher. Yeah, Ryan, I'm with that as well. But look at how long Rashawn Gary took just to be a guy who's not good enough by himself. Like, Rashawn Gary took years to get where he is now, and he's still not good enough to be a game wrecker in and of himself. He's a fine player. He's a very good player. But he's not a guy who can single-handedly be your pass rush like some other edge rushers in the league. And we're talking about the best, but hey, that's what the Packers are trying to find. No, don't worry, the Packers will draft an edge rusher. Okay, from the producers of Rashawn Gary and Lucas Van Ness, please welcome player X, and that's the player who's supposed to fix this front four in this pass rush, which wasn't nearly good enough last year. Unlike the back end of the defense, which is actually fine, and unlike the O-line, which was outstanding, and those are the 2 position groups, of course, that Goody shoots his wad today. One more call, and then we'll take a break. Wisco Sports Show, who's this?
Oh, man, Grant, so many things to discuss about this. $118 million as a Packers stockholder. Oh, my gosh. I'm not too excited about it. I do like Hobbs, but I don't know about spending the money on the guards. That was kind of ridiculous in my opinion. But it just reiterates the fact that I think Gutekunst wants to have that first-round draft pick, buddy.
I don't. I
we
mean,
didn't trade for anybody.
Yeah,
we
but
didn't
who's
trade for
who's
anybody
throwing
in the
first round
squad.
picks around? Who is throwing? Name me the team and the general
Yeah, I know,
manager who's like, take all our first round picks. The draft's not in our backyard.
Well, we talked about a first round pick last week in
We
a
did.
trade for Garrett or whoever, DK Metcalf, and he ended up, not going for much at all. Sorry, I'm driving through Madison traffic right now, so I'm a little annoyed.
Nah, you're good.
But anyway, yeah. So it was, whatever. It's not our money, but it is kind of our money because we're stockholders. But I guess you just got to be happy with it, right? And hope it works out for the best, and hope we can find some good guys in the draft.
Well, I will hope for the best because I'm a Packers fan. I don't have to be happy about it. That is not correct, Matt in Cross Plains. I think, look, if you want the positive spin, and I'm not making this up, it's just not the spin that I'm choosing to focus on because I don't think it's the most important spin. The Packers have probably thought over the last year or so, and the first sign of this was signing Josh Jacobs. They want to become a little bit more physical. They want to do some more running in between the tackles, right? And a player like Aaron Banks is going to be part of that. And maybe that signals a little bit of a change from the taller, thinner, more mobile offensive linemen they've prioritized over the last 2 decades, really. And they want some road graders. Okay, fine. That's okay, sure. Then go get a road grader. It's going to cost you a pile of money. And why I don't really, again, it all comes back to the Jordan Morgan pick last year and the Packers' philosophy forever of drafting offensive linemen before they need them, bringing them up through the system, finding them a place to play, imposing some positional versatility. Goody talked about that at the Combine. I thought the reason you did all that was so you don't have to spend huge money on a player like Aaron Banks. I guess that's the disconnect that's kind of got me bugging out. That, and not to mention, the offensive line was their best position on the field last year. Hands down. They were unbelievable. So all you Packers fans saying, got to keep Jordan Love upright. They did. They did an unbelievable job of keeping him upright last year. They didn't do enough good. They didn't do a good enough job as a wide receiver position, getting open, catching the ball, and they didn't do a good enough job getting the opposing quarterback on the ground. And those are the 2 positions that went untouched today in free agency. Well, the Packers spent big money at positions that I think could have been just as well served with draft picks. Let's take a break. Couple minutes. We'll come right back. Continue the show next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes.
Chicago, Detroit, Minnesota, that's 3 losses. Philadelphia, loss. Washington, loss. Baltimore, loss. Cincinnati, loss. Maybe a win against Carolina. On the road, Dallas, maybe a win because they're so poor. New York, we should win. Cleveland, maybe a win, maybe not. Pittsburgh, especially with Aaron Rodgers going back there, that's a definite loss. Arizona will beat us out in the desert. Mile high, bloody nose from the Denver Broncos. If we can't get to the Super Bowl, how are we going to win or lose one?
That's Tim in Arizona. Caller to Bill's show and the Green and Gold postgame show. I had to clip that portion of his call earlier because it made me laugh. I don't necessarily agree, but I think it's funny. And I don't disagree, however, with the spirit of the call because he called in around 11 or noon today. I don't remember when it was. And at this moment in time, we had seen DK Metcalf come off the board. We had seen Devontae Adams come off the board. We'd seen Khalil Mack and Milton Williams come off the board. Some really solid edge rusher, game-breaking edge rusher options come off the board. We'd seen DJ Reed not just come off the board, but come off the board to the Lions, to a divisional rival. Paulson Adebo, he came off the board. The Bears made another signing to their interior line. They got the pass rusher from Indy, whose name I struggle to pronounce. So we're seeing all these great players come off the board, and we're seeing a couple of them go to division rivals. And I can't disagree with the spirit of Tim's call. You heard in the bumper there coming back. It's like, so the Lions are getting better or staying the same. The Bears are getting much better. The Vikings lost a corner but replaced him, much like the Lions did. I'm sorry, Packer. Do you think that all of a sudden the Vikings and the Lions and the Bears are just going to go back to sucking? Like, is that how you think this is going to go? Is that how you think that this offseason and the next couple of seasons is going to proceed? Like, don't worry. We're the Green Bay Packers. God loves us more. So the Lions will go back to sucking and the Bears will always suck. And the Vikings, maybe they'll pop up here and there, but for the most part, they're the Vikings. They'll go back to sucking. Like, these two teams, the Lions and the Vikings, are legit. And my God, if the Bears can't at least approach 500 this year, then they should just raise the franchise from the face of the earth because there are just too many good players and coaches who I think at least have a clue. So the Packers sitting back, well, wide receiver 1 options come off the board. Edge rusher options come off the board. The 2 biggest positions of need that we've talked about all year long. And I think those are the biggest positions of need. 1 game-breaking wide receiver to supplement and to help bring the other young guys who I still believe in come along, or 1 edge rusher to complement Kenny Clark and Rashawn Gary, who I think are very good but not great, to help bring Lucas Van Ness along, to help supplement Kingsley Enagbare, and to help create some pressure in front of Quay Walker and Edgerrin Cooper. Those were the 2 areas. And I saw all of these options for those two areas come off the board, and some of them to division rivals. It's like, guys, do the Packers think that the Vikings and the Lions are just going to get worse and that the Bears are never going to figure it out? Because that's kind of how they've operated. They've operated from a position of arrogance. And I know later on in the day, they went on to sign a guard and they went on to sign a corner. But I don't think corner was far from their biggest issue last year. And the O-line was probably their biggest strength, right? And I go back to what Matt LaFleur said at his end of the year presser. And maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm an idiot for listening to what Brian Gutekunst says. Maybe I'm an idiot for listening to what Matt LaFleur says. Maybe I should just ignore the press conferences. Maybe that's my fault. But when Brian Gutekunst says we need to up our sense of urgency, it's time to contend for Super Bowls. Again, these are his words, not mine.
It's time that we start competing for championships.
And when Matt LaFleur in his end of the season presser says, I don't know, it's kind of a weird year in the division, right? It's like, if by weird you mean there were other teams of quality, is that what you mean by weird? Matt, sometimes divisions are good. Sometimes there's more than one good team. Sometimes you have to scrap and fight and claw to win a division. Sometimes you need to win 13 games to win your division. That's just the reality for some teams. It was kind of a weird year last year. I don't know, was it? The fact that a couple of the teams in your division finally got a clue, that makes it a weird year. So I get the frustration from Packers fans. And I know as the day progressed today, if you're just joining the show and you're just tapping in now, I know Twitter was down for a big portion of the day today, or maybe you're someone with a real job and real responsibilities and you can't just stare at ESPN or you can't just stare at Twitter all day. The Packers signed Aaron, what the hell is his name? I can't remember. And I made the graphics. Let me throw it up on the screen. Aaron Banks, yes, for 4 years, $77 million. They also signed Nate Hobbs, 4 years, $48 million. And those are quality players. They will help add depth at important positions. Corner is an important position. Offensive line is an important position. But again, their offensive line was tremendous last year. And they're not losing anyone other than Josh Myers, who we all agree kind of sucked. Maybe suck is unfair, but very inconsistent and not someone that you probably want to give a long-term contract to. Okay? Is that fair? I'll use fair, accurate language instead of zesty, aggressive, entertaining sports radio language. We all agreed that other than Josh Myers, that unit was really good, and they're bringing back everyone other than Josh Myers. Okay. But Grant, they need to extend Zach Tom. And Sean Ryan's going to need a new contract. And maybe Rasheed Walker. Okay, isn't that why you drafted Jacob Monk? And isn't that why you drafted Jordan Morgan in the first round? Like, what were those picks for? I thought that selecting an offensive lineman when you don't need an offensive lineman was the insurance against needing to pay a guard $80 million. He's a fine guard, by the way. He's not Quentin Nelson. He's a really good run blocker. He's so-so as a pass blocker. He's fine, right? And you gave him $80 million. Wait for the real money to come out. Okay, they gave him a lot of money. Is that better? Is that more accurate? They gave him a lot of money. And it's not that I hate it, because they got a good player who will help them in an important position. But it's a salary cap league, and you only have so many resources to spend. And I think some resources should be allocated here, and other resources should be allocated there. I don't think you needed a veteran on the O-line. I don't think you needed a veteran at corner. You needed a veteran edge rusher or a veteran wide receiver. You could have supplemented your O-line with the draft. Shoot, you did it last year. What's up with those guys? Can Jacob Monk not play? Can Jordan Morgan not play? Throw a third-round pick and a fifth or a sixth-round pick at corner. Get some depth and get some youth behind Carrington Valentine and Keyshawn Nixon and Javon Bullard, who I thought was going to be the slot, but now that they gave $48 million to Nate Hobbs, I'm not so sure. So again, more good players. It's not a bad thing. I don't hate it. I just feel like this could have been done differently. This could have been approached differently. I would have approached it differently. You can text to call the show, 608-321-1670. You can comment on the live stream, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Let's take a 3-minute break. I'll get to some of your comments on the other side.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Really physically dominant guy. So I'd have made a hard run if I were the Packers, but they've got their reasons, and Adams wouldn't have interested me too much. I don't think. I think he was going to, I'll be curious to see what his contract is, but I think he was going to be too expensive for a guy who's turning 33 this year. Do you want to pay that much money to find out whether, the decline is really kicking in or not? He'll probably be good, but man, that's starting to get up there for a receiver.
Yeah.
So I totally get him not going after Adams.
That's Pete Doherty earlier today on Bill's show. I always love taking a soundbite or two from Pete every time he comes on because he's all information, very contemplative, very straightforward. Not a lot of opinion mixed in there. A little bit of opinion, but it's really, really, really informational. And I agree with him. And Devontae Adams, okay. I wouldn't have been mad if they found a way to bring him back, but it wouldn't have been my first choice. He's saying, look, DK Metcalf, with those traits and the fit that he would have had in Green Bay, would have been exactly what they were looking for. Okay, yeah, he makes $50 million a year. It's a lot of money. Okay, good players make money. I'm not sure Aaron Banks is that good. I'm not sure Aaron Banks is the same level of offensive lineman that DK Metcalf is level of wide receiver. You know what I mean? So I got a text, I believe it was Mike in Portage on the text line, 608-321-1670, basically saying, Grant, feel free to share with the class what you would have done instead of Gutekunst. Well, I would have liked to, as I've told you 6 different times now, add a veteran wide receiver or add a veteran edge rusher. It doesn't have to be a veteran. I'm not saying he's got to be a wily, wise 32-year-old. No, if you can find 26, 27, 28-year-old, that seems to be the Packers' bag, go get that guy. You can supplement your offensive line in the draft. I've watched them do it for years. You can supplement corner with picks. I agree with Ryan Wood. And do I have the soundbite? This is when I need a producer. I cut Ryan Wood last week on Bill's show saying, you know what? I'm kind of out on a limb by myself here, but I don't think they need a corner. I think they're okay. I think they were okay last year. You need pass rush. That's what you need. That's what you really, really need. So that I don't know. So my mind's stuck on that as well. That's what I would have done. I like that they're spending. I would have spent it different positions, if at all possible. Ryan in Manitowoc earlier, thank you for texting Bill's show. I'm scrolling down to this text just says they should give Luke Fickell an extension to bum me out more than the signing of Banks. Oh, wait, they did. Yeah. Tom from Oak Creek says, I don't dislike either signing, but it seemed like the Packers needed a big-time impact player, and neither is probably that. At least the Packers will provide another fall, winter of entertainment and passion, to steal a quote from Attanasio. Speaking of signings, like the Quintana signing by the Brewers, best news of the day, Yelich hit another homer. Damn straight. Eau Claire Chris says, why not just save the money and draft where you need players? Okay, I don't need to save the money. They can spend the money. I just think there are certain positions that need a little draft depth, and there are certain positions that have depth and they need a game breaker. I don't think they needed a game breaker on the O-line, and I don't think Aaron Banks is that guy. I think he's a slightly average above offensive lineman who excels at run blocking and is kind of a crummy pass blocker. Now, luckily, the rest of their O-line is incredible at pass blocking. They were one of the best. They were a top 2 or 3 pass blocking offensive line in the league last year. So for all the folks who are like, well, they're going to keep Jordan Love upright. They have. They did an outstanding job keeping him upright last year. There were very few teams. There were 1 or 2 teams, maybe the Broncos. And who's the other team? I have the graphic here. I've been pouring over composite ratings. It was like the Broncos and the Buccaneers, and that was it. Well, they got to protect Jordan Love. They did protect him last year. They did an outstanding job protecting him last year. And they're pretty good at run blocking. Now, Aaron Banks is going to help run block a little bit, but you couldn't have found that guy in the draft. John in Fall Creek says, as a Lions fan, I was hoping DJ Reed didn't go to Green Bay. Was pretty pumped he signed for cheaper than Carlton Davis. Yeah, how about that? What a windfall for Lions fans. Carlton Davis goes to cash in somewhere else, and you get DJ Reed a lot cheaper than many thought. A lot of people missed with those contract projections. Corey and Marshall said, if you've done something different than Goody, please share with the class. I already addressed that one. One more, Bobby and Menominee. I really like the Hobbs ad. He'll be 26 this season, so hopefully you're cashing in on his best play. Yeah, hopefully. I mean, Goody, they have a type in free agency. Get guys on their second contract, right in their mid-20s, still in their athletic prime. They don't like going over 30, but I kind of feel like Khalil Mack signed for $18 million for 1 year with the Chargers. You couldn't have given him 20, 22 to just come in and be that final piece on a defensive front that I think is fine. And you adjust the coaching, and the Packers really seem to think that coaching needed a change. Okay, so I'm going to bake in hopefully some improvement there. And bake in hopefully more improvement in year 2 in Jeff Hafley's scheme. Could you find Khalil Mack, just stick him in there for a year or 2? It's not like the Chargers brought him back for 4 years. He got 1 year, $18 million. And I see Bukowski on Twitter is like, I would have liked Mack, but that's a huge price tag. For 1 year, I'd give him 50. Hyperbole, of course, but you get what I'm saying. Not trying to be Johnny Raincloud. The Packers signed 2 guys who will help them, of course. I just would have liked to see that money spent on other areas because I don't think you can get the same impact by throwing a draft pick at wide receiver or by throwing a draft pick at edge rusher that you could have gotten with free agency. Wide receiver, maybe they luck out, but edge rusher, Grant, why don't you think they can get impact by drafting an edge rusher? I don't know, because I've watched them every year for the last 10 years and I have eyes connected to my brain and I've seen them try to do it. It takes at least 3 years for any of these guys to be worth anything. And it's still like Rashawn Gary, it took him 6 or 7 years and he's very good. He's still not great. So no, to be honest, I don't trust this team to go out and get a game breaker in the draft at edge rusher. Sorry. They've had 2 top 15 picks to do it. Now they're at 23. You think they can do it 23rd overall or the second round pick? No, I do not think that. Let's get an update from Zach Halper in 2 minutes. We'll get back to taking your calls. 608-321-1670 as soon as hour number 2 begins.
This is a Wisconsin Sports Zone update.
Well, the Packers are on the board in free agency. Green Bay has reportedly agreed to a pair of deals as the NFL's negotiating period got going at 11 a.m. this morning. The first came in the form of guard Aaron Banks. He agreed to a 4-year, $77 million deal. Spent the last 4 years with the 49ers, starting 43 games over the last 3. He was considered one of, if not the top guard on the market. Could also allow the Packers to move Elton Jenkins or Sean Ryan to center. The team also agreed to a 4-year, $48 million deal with cornerback Nate Hobbs. 25-year-old was with the Raiders the last 4 seasons. Started 38 games over that time period with 3 interceptions and 19 pass breakups. Green Bay also lost one of their own free agents in defensive tackle TJ Slayton. He agreed to a deal with the Bengals. It was also reported that center Josh Myers will not be re-signed by the Packers, and in his time with deals until Wednesday. Turning to Wisconsin, one of their commits in the 2024 recruiting class, medically retiring from football. Tight end said concussions and neurological issues had forced him to give up football. He did not play last season while redshirting.
Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
When a company only does business in Wisconsin, that's Wisconsin Strong. Rural Mutual provides all lines of insurance, including commercial, farm, home, and auto. And your premiums stay right here. Keep Wisconsin Strong. Local agents, local underwriters, local claims adjusters.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Well, Wisconsin's going to have to wait until Wednesday to find out who their opponent for the Big Ten tournament will be. They are the 5th seed and will take on the winner of Northwestern and Minnesota. That game being played on Wednesday. Badgers will get the winner of that on Thursday. If the Badgers win that one, they will face UCLA on Friday. And the Bucs are in Indiana. That's where they're going to face the Pacers tomorrow night. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heil, Print.
There is another bag. This one being dropped in Green Bay, Wisconsin. The top guard is now off the market. 49ers guard Aaron Banks is expected to sign with the Packers as quarterback Jordan Love gets another bodyguard, says Rap Sheet. Aaron Banks to the Packers. Packers making a play on first day of free agency. I know Ty is somewhere excited about this move. AJ, how do you feel?
I like them getting on the board here. Like you said, like Rap Sheet says, the top guard off the market. Yeah, why not? I mean, Green Bay is set up for success for a long time if you think about it. If they could just keep Jordan Love upright, keep him healthy, the defense continues to get better and better. The Packers are looking good.
Always focused on versatility with our offensive linemen, whether it be because of injury or because we have players that leave. We feel really good about the flexibility of our guys to play multiple spots and try to get the best 5 on the field. So I feel really good about our group right now.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
Again, I like that soundbite from Goody. He's like, I feel great about our group. Love our line. You go out and spend $80 million on a guard. So I'm not trying to rain on the Packers parade today. I think they got better. They signed a corner. They signed a guard. I just would have preferred to draft players at both of those positions and then fire your free agency bullets at positions that I think are in more drastic need of help. Wide receiver, edge rusher. Is that not reasonable? I think that's beyond reasonable for everyone on the live stream, especially you, Q. Who's like, I don't know why Grant's so complaining. Is it that unbelievable? Is it that nasty of me to be like, all right, I'm never going to yell and get mad about helping the O-line, building the O-line. And all right, a corner, nice depth piece. Is it so unreasonable to say, I just would have preferred to fire the free agency bullets at other positions that I think are more drastic needs? Is that so crazy? I don't think so. I was reading an article from the 33rd team. Tyler Brook, who's been on the show, has been doing write-ups, little blurbs about every free agent signing so far. I'll give you what he said about the Packers. Remember, he's a Packers guy, or he likes the Packers. He's not Florio or like he's not Paul Allen writing write-ups over here. Like this guy's probably, I'm not saying he's biased, but he's not biased against the Packers either. Nate Hobbs signs with the Packers. Grade C. Cornerback depth was a big need for the Green Bay Packers and could become an even bigger need if they end up parting ways with Jair, which they will. But notice what he says there. Cornerback depth. Depth. You know where you get depth? The draft. Nate Hobbs gets a way bigger deal than expected, getting a 4-year, $48 million contract. There's only $16 million in guarantees, but the number comes as a surprise given his NFL production. It's unclear if Hobbs will play on the outside or in the slot, but at 6'1", 195 pounds, he's now the biggest cornerback on the roster as it stands. The Packers need to add some talent at the position, but the price tag for the player comes at a surprise. I would tend to agree. I'll give you his words about the offensive lineman whose name, Aaron Banks. Here we go. Grade C+. Says the Green Bay Packers make a big swing on the offensive line by throwing a bag at former San Francisco guard Aaron Banks. This move makes sense from a scheme standpoint. The Packers became a heavy run team, but lacked a thick lineman like the 325-pound Banks to move bodies in the trenches. All right, so we talked about that. Ryan in Alaska called in earlier. Yeah, I think this marks a little bit of a sea change in their approach up front. We need some more girth, maybe some less skinny mobile athleticism, some more girth. And Tyler Brook continues at the 33rd team. That's exactly what Banks can bring as a guard who allowed just 1 sack in pass pro. Still, that deal makes Banks one of the highest paid guards in football, so he better be exactly what Green Bay was looking for in the trenches. I agree. I think that's super reasonable, right? It's like, okay, they got what they were looking for, but man, it's a lot of money for both guys, so they better be exactly what they're looking for. You know what I mean? 608-321-1670, taking your calls on this. These moves and the moves that the Packers didn't make, if you have things to say about that, right up until 6 o'clock. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Brad, good evening. It's Corey.
Corey and Marshall. Good evening, Corey.
So, that's clear as winter. So, yeah, I like the discussion around the free agent signings and what have you. I think it's a lively one. I would push back, respectfully, of course, on the notion that the offensive line was a unimpeachable strength this year. Let's put it that way. There is a reason why, and you might slam me for this after I get off the phone. That's okay. Why Jordan Love was hobbling around, the first 7 weeks of the season, because they couldn't protect it against Philadelphia's defensive line, right?
It's a nasty defensive line, yeah.
It is. And Gutekunst was asked at the combine about catching up with Philadelphia, and he's like, you asked that about San Francisco last year. Well, this kind of suggests to us, to me at least, that he is trying to kind of catch up to Philadelphia's defensive line to protect his quarterback, right?
Yes.
Everything starts with the offensive line on the football team. That Nick Saban will say it, because if they're not performing well enough, it kind of all rolls downhill from there.
Yeah.
So that's my take on that. Cornerback, you probably do have to overpay for that, but he matches the physical specimens that they want, like 6'1", at least the Ron Wolf style, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
I would have felt kind of scared a little bit going into the season with Keyshawn Nixon as our primetime starting cornerback.
Sure.
Because I know a lot of people like him, but I still sometimes say, what do you actually do in this team? Other than,
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, right? You're kind of in the same boat on that one. He wants to return kicks, and he's like, well, I don't want to return kicks. Like, okay, dude, you're not the one that's in charge of that, right? And he thinks he's Chuck Woodson, but he ain't Chuck Woodson, right? At cornerback. So
Chuck Woodson.
Charles.
I know, I got you.
So,
no, I do.
Yeah, I know. So on the one hand, I agree with you. On the other hand, I'm not completely apoplectic about it. I think perhaps they're concerned about what the cornerback position looks like in the draft. That's kind of maybe a weak,
sure,
a weak point to make, but that might be what they're seeing, right? Obviously, it's I'm not breaking any news here that they probably see something different these guys than what we do and what we assume. With Khalil Mack, I would have liked to see him try to sign him. I agree on that. However, it always does take two to tango. He might not have wanted to leave San Diego.
Sure, and maybe,
there.
and we saw a big theme today, Corey. I got to let you go. Appreciate it. We saw a big theme today of guys staying home for maybe a little less money. Chris Godwin, most notably. We also got to remember, guys hate moving, especially for Khalil Mack. Khalil Mack is like, okay, I can make $18 million a year here playing in LA, or I can make 20, but I got to move my ass to Green Bay. For a 1-year deal, do I really want to do that? Okay, sure, fine. And maybe they never even called on Khalil Mack. I don't know. But when I saw that, it's like, oh, he signed for 1 year, $18 million. Packers couldn't have done that. Maybe he had no interest. Sure. On the O-line, Corey saying, well, it all starts and ends with the O-line. Look at how the Packers let him down in the Eagles in the playoff game last year. Okay, sure. But I've long said this about the O-line, and I have talked about this with guests that are much smarter than me, and they have echoed this sentiment. I think you reach a point of diminishing returns on the offensive line. And the phrase diminishing returns, it's an economic phrase, and it's misused a lot, right? Diminishing returns doesn't mean, well, if you stop spending here, your returns will diminish. No. That's simple investment. Like if I spend $20 on food, I get, ABC amount. If I spend $15 on food, I get, XYZ amount. That's not diminishing returns. The principle, the law of diminishing returns means you reach a point where the more money you put in, you're not going to get, requisite money out. Like if I invest $20 and receive $40 in return, if I invest $25 and receive $42, my returns have diminished. That's what technically, if you go by the economic root of that phrase, the law of diminishing returns, it's an economic thing. It's misused a lot. And I mean it in the purest, most economic sense when I say the offensive line. You reach a point of diminishing returns in investing on the O-line. If you can get an offensive line that's an 8 or a 9 out of 10, and if you look at the data from last year, and I have some composites, and I'll throw them up on the live stream, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter if you want to learn. Look at how good this Packers offensive line was last year. They were top 3 in pass blocking in just about every metric, and they were upper 25%, let's say, in run blocking. So they certainly were a better pass blocking offensive line than they were run blocking, but they weren't a bad run blocking offensive line. They just weren't as elite. Okay. So I'm free balling, just a loose evaluation for the sake of the take. Let's say they had an 8 out of 10 offensive line. Very, very good. Not perfect, but very, very good. I think you reach a point of diminishing returns when you try to take that 8 out of 10 O-line to a 9 or a 10. You're not going to get the returns on your investment. I think you got to reach a point on your O-line when you say, that's going to have to do. We need to make our bones elsewhere, because I think it's really, really difficult to have a perfect O-line, an offensive line that never makes mistakes, an offensive line that's flawless. I think it's this goal, it's this rabbit you could chase forever. I don't think you can achieve it, and the closer you get, the further your returns diminish. I'm fine with them having the quality of O-line they had last year. 8 out of 10, very, very good. 90% of the teams in the NFL would kill to have the O-line the Packers had last year. Keep it there, maintain it there, and beef up other parts of your team. Everyone wants to cite the Eagles. Well, look at the Eagles O-line, right? That's what the goal is. No. The goal is to have an excellent offensive line, which the Packers did, and then to have a pass rush that can murder people on a week-to-week basis. That's why the Eagles won that Super Bowl. Their offensive line was a nifty luxury at that point. Their pass rush was so hot and so good, of course, on top of their secondary and their all-pro linebacker, Zach Bond. You know what I mean? The Packers pass rush is not even that it wasn't as good as the Eagles. It wasn't there. It was non-existent. That 4-man pass rush was non-existent. They had to completely schematically flip what they were doing in order to just sniff opposing quarterbacks. That's where I want to spend my resources, not trying to take an 8 out of 10 O-line to a 9 out of 10. Because I don't think you're getting return on your investment once you reach a certain point, which, by the way, not to nerd out, and I'm far from a nerd. I'm very stupid on most topics. But that's what the economic term is. Law of diminishing returns. You get a diminished investment once you reach a certain point of excellence on the O-line. And I think the Packers, I think they meet that point every year. I think every year they're at a point where it's like, that should be good enough. You need to be better elsewhere. That's the difference. And I fear that throwing $80 million at a guard is, I don't think they're going to get a good enough return on that investment for that investment to be worth it. Could be wrong. Hope to be. I'm a Packers fan after all. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Wow, Grant.
Darnell.
Yes. Sorry, Darnell here. You brought in relativity to a sports show. That's pretty impressive.
Well, I'm pretty brilliant, as you know. I'm well studied on lots of things. I took one math class in college. I don't even think I took an econ class in college. I'm not smart, but I can throw a phrase around every once in a while.
Well, and it extends beyond economics. My dad used to say diminishing returns is you buy 5 cheeseburgers. The first cheeseburger tastes amazing. The 5th cheeseburger doesn't taste that good if you eat in succession. So
correct.
So yeah, that's pretty fun. You put that in a sports topic here, but shout out to the Packers and the Bucks this weekend for letting us talk about the Packers and the Bucks instead of the god awful Badgers,
dude.
Whatever the hell that was on Saturday. Oh my God.
Were you at the game by chance?
I was.
Okay.
That was like probably the worst game I've gone to in 7 or 8 years.
I considered going, but the nosebleeds were hundreds of dollars, and I'm not exactly flush with cash right now. Okay. I've reached, let's say, a point of diminishing returns in my income at this moment in time. I don't have money. I got a wedding. I got to go to Mexico next week. Like I got bills. Okay, Darnell. So I was going to go and I didn't. Now I will ask you this because I've retired from talking about the subject, but I saw Evan Flood tweet that the Badgers bench maybe didn't seem totally satisfied with the energy level in the building. Can you speak to that?
So, I mean, the energy was there at the start.
Okay.
The energy in the building kind of diminished, and it was due to the play. It was the fact that they had a 15-point lead with 3 minutes left in the half, and then by the end of the half, or by halftime, it's a 3-point lead or a 5-point lead. It's just they had no energy on the court at that point. And they've had that a couple times this year. It's been a little scary, where they're cruising and then they just hit some kind of plateau, like a 2021-22 Badger plateau, where you're just like, what's going on? They're trying to do the same thing on offense every single time, and it wasn't working. And then, the second half was stale. The energy was just completely flipped from the Illinois game, which I also went to.
Oh, it was
2 weeks ago.
Unbelievable. That building was so loud that night. And I'm not going to act like I go all the time. It's like, it's the loudest I've ever heard it. But even up in the nosebleeds, I'm like, this place is lit up. That place was fired up. And that was a Tuesday night.
It was a Tuesday night. And that was a great game. But here's the thing. Like, the atmosphere is one thing. But, it was a great atmosphere against Washington, too. And that was just a week ago.
Yeah.
So it really – I'm sorry, but if you're a basketball player, you better take care of what you're doing on the basketball court and worry a little bit less about what's going on in the stands, because you can dictate that from a major perspective, like that's your job, is to make sure that people have something to cheer for. And there was nothing to cheer for in that second half. That was, especially at the end. It's like they had it in their grasp, down by 2 with 3 minutes left, and just crap the bed. So
yeah,
shout out to the Packers for letting Wisconsinites talk about something other than dropping from a 3 to a 5 seed in one day.
Yeah, and Marquette losing at the buzzer to St. John's, which was very funny, gave us something to laugh about, at least while our team lost. I don't want to say it was the highest stakes game of the year, but the stakes were so clearly defined. Win, and you get a double bye in the Big Ten tournament, and you're playing the worst team in the conference. Penn State had never won at the Kohl Center before. That's how bad that program has been forever. And you let them come in on your senior day, and a senior day that's loaded with meaningful seniors. Crowell has been there forever. Gilmore's been there forever. McGee has been there. And I know I'm probably forgetting something. I'm sorry, but you get my point, right? At least Marquette gave us something to laugh about. And I was down in the third ward. We were getting brunch in Milwaukee with some friends, and we walked around. And as we were kind of finishing brunch, because I saw the end at the table, we pulled it up on the phone. And as we were leaving brunch, some Marquette fans were just starting to file in, and they had their gear on, and they sat down at the table next to us. And I stopped by the table as they were getting ready to order. I said, my phone died. Did Marquette won, right? Oh no. Oh, what happened? And then I made them describe it to me. Which maybe says something about me and my coping mechanisms when the Badgers lose. Or maybe it just says something about how petty I am towards Marquette fans. But yeah, horrendous Badgers loss. Horrendous. And the most frustrating part is, like the Oregon game, they clearly had it. They had a lead in the Oregon game. It's not like they didn't show up ready to play. It's not like it was some emotional letdown spot. They showed up ready. They had the facilities. They had the energy. And they let it get away. Oregon and Penn State both. And I think that's what's most frustrating of all. Like, if Penn State came out from the jump and just ripped them up and it was clear that the Badgers were flat, that would have been disappointing, but disappointing for another reason. This is, you were by far and away the better team, and you let a team for the second time in 2 Saturdays come in, or 3 Saturdays, and just steal your lunch when you had to have it and you had the game in your hand. There's your Badgers basketball minute. 608-321-1670. We'll get back to Packers free agency next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
The one position to me, Bill, and I am all alone out here. I am standing on a limb that is really by myself. But the one position to me that I'm not saying it's not a need, but it's not nearly as high as a need as I've seen from everywhere else is cornerback. They need numbers there. Brian Gutekunst said after the season that they need numbers. But I think that Brian Gutekunst sees two primary factors other than they have a decent triumvirate right now with Keyshawn Nixon, Carrington Valentine on the outside. Javon Bullard, safety next to his name on the roster, should only be considered a nickel cornerback from here on out. Evan Williams is the starting safety next to Xavier McKinney. Doesn't mean that Javon Bullard can't play safety. He's your starting slot corner going into next season. They need to add the depth from there. But the two primary factors, one, the tutelage of Jeff Hafley. These are the same corners of 2023 under Joe Barry that allowed a perfect passer rating to Baker Mayfield, that allowed Bryce Young to look like a competent starting quarterback in the NFL as a rookie. Same group, totally, it could not be more opposite play in 2024 under Jeff Hafley. The Jeff Hafley effect was very, very evident when it came to this quarterback group and how much better they played, how well they played, how Keyshawn Nixon found a home on the perimeter, never felt comfortable in the slot. The other, the safety group that we keep talking about, the way that they bolster the coverage on the back end takes so much pressure off those three corners. They need depth there, but at the end of the day, it would not surprise me if they're walking into 2025 with Keyshawn Nixon, Carrington Valentine as your perimeter starters, Javon Bullard as your slot guy, and then bring in some depth.
That was Ryan Wood last week on the Bill Michaels Show, and I agree with him. I agreed with him when he said it. It's like, yeah, they need some depth at corner, throw a couple draft picks there to get some youth in the hopper, right? So there's people in the pipeline, and maybe they play. If you draft good rookies, they play right away. They can help you win. But I'm with Ryan in that I don't know that they needed it. That being said, the Packers signed 2 free agents today, and I think I like the cornerback signing better. That's Nate Hobbs for 4 years, $48 million. Just as a guy who you put him in the slot, put him on the outside, wherever he fits better for a particular game plan, just gives another option to Jeff Hafley. Great. I like that signing, which I didn't think was necessary. I wasn't really all hot and bothered for the possibility of DJ Reed, although I think it sucks he went to the Lions. Paulson Adebo was a possibility, but I wasn't banging the table. Need to sign a corner, need to sign a corner, need to sign a corner. I think with the talent they've amassed at safety, the talent at linebacker, and the assumed upgrades at edge rusher, corner will be fine. But then they didn't upgrade the pass rush position. They had, they signed a corner. Okay. I still like that more than giving $80 million to a guard. And I understand that the contract is more complicated than $80 million over 4 years or whatever. But some Packers fans, they chime in on Twitter like, wait for the real numbers. Like the real number is $8 an hour. Like, no, they gave him a pile of money. And he's an excellent run blocker. He's kind of a crummy pass blocker. I think he's a solid to good to pretty good O-lineman who got a lot of money from a team that's really good at developing O-linemen. So that doesn't really all fit with me. It would be like the Brewers giving big money to a reliever. Like, yeah, okay, I guess I want the player. I like the talent, but couldn't you better allocate those resources elsewhere to positions that aren't so easily upgraded through the draft? Wide receiver, edge rusher. You'll get a guard in a corner and like it. It's better than nothing, I suppose. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Well, Grant, Tim from Sparta.
Hey, Tim.
I don't know that it's better than nothing, but
you'd rather have nothing?
Well, possibly. If they didn't have to pay, $100 million for 2 players over X number of years. Yeah. I realize contracts are, it's all going to come down to how much guaranteed money there is. That's what we know. And I understand your disappointment because it's my disappointment as well. I'm actually going to agree with dang near everything that you said tonight, which just some days hurts my gizzard. But we were never going to get Metcalf. I mean, nobody, because he was never going, Gutekunst was never going to pay that bill.
Okay.
Even if he had to trade nobody, he was never going to pay that bill.
I guess I don't disagree with that. My point would be is maybe he should have. You know what I mean? Like, I guess that's the point of conversation. That's maybe what we should cover is whether or not he should. And you don't like, look, 50 million per year is a lot of money, or 50 million, you know what I mean? 30 million a year or whatever he got's a lot of money. But the conversation isn't, Goody was ever going to do that. The conversation is, should he have done that? And because he didn't, should we be critical of Goody for that? I guess is my follow-up, Tim, but keep going.
Yep. And with this group, I would agree that he should have, even though I would hated to have seen him pay that kind of money. But my biggest thing is Van Ness has not proven to be the person that they wanted him to be, which is an outside rusher.
Correct.
And he either has to be or they're toast, because unless Gutekunst is going to make some type of we're going to give you our first round, give you our second round, and a fifth round pick, he's not going to be able to jump up high enough in the draft to get one of the few really qualified edge rushers that there are.
Sure.
And that's what this team needs. I think you're right. And the fellow that you had on last week was right that their cornerbacks are not as bad as what we think they are. But, you just look at it and you go, they have got to find some way to put more pressure on the quarterback with four guys. Because they were in that, people have this revisionist history. They were in that Philadelphia game.
Yeah.
They should have won the first one.
They were in the second because of their defense, which I think a lot of people have gotten lost. We need to build the defense. The defense was the better unit for the last month of the season last year.
Yes, it was. Absolutely. And now I understand picking up the guard, but not at that price, for God's sakes. So go get yourself a big fat road grader in the draft.
Yeah. So this is the thing, Tim. Everyone's like, well, you can't pay DK Metcalf $30 million a year, but all of a sudden we're going to start paying guards huge money. Like, I thought we were the team that let our guards walk to get stupid money elsewhere. What happened to that? That used to be what the Packers last offseason, what they did. They let John Runyon Jr. go to get a pile of money from New York.
Absolutely. And that's what I can't figure this out. I mean, you won't pay Metcalf, which, okay, I can see that, but then you pay a guard $19 million a year?
Yeah.
Really? How does that work exactly? When you can find one, this year, supposedly we have, a lot of offensive linemen, and you took your first round draft pick instead of Cooper DeJean, you took your first round draft pick as a tackle who you're going to who is a project that you're going to then turn into a guard.
Yeah.
So
we thought.
I just don't understand the logic to this. Maybe there's a plan that, will become apparent, but my magic 8-ball says, do over.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, Tim. That's a great call. It's nice to hear from you on this show because you call Bill a lot, but I don't hear from you as often. Selfishly, I know you call Ebo as well. Tim and Sparta, everyone. Taking Jordan Morgan last year was not everyone's favorite pick, and it has not aged well because there have been other players who the Packers could have had that have gone on to play very good for teams like the Eagles, a rival to the Packers, a team that eliminated the Packers from the postseason. I'm not going to act like Cooper DeJean's the best ball player in the world and he was the obvious pick, but he was a player that people thought, I'll put it this way, a player who probably would have played a little bit more as a rookie and probably would have helped the team a little bit more as a rookie than Jordan Morgan, who didn't play at all. Oh, he was hurt. Is that Goody's fault? Okay, but even if he wasn't hurt, like was he going to play? The offensive line was tremendous. It was the best unit on the field. They were a top 3 pass blocking unit, and they were upper 25% when it came to run blocking. Wasn't their strength, but it wasn't a weakness either. Picking Jordan Morgan makes sense then as a mechanism to eventually protect yourself when you're faced with the option of, do we pay Josh Myers? Do we pay Rashid White? Do we pay some of these other guys? Picking Jordan Morgan in that spot makes a lot less sense if you're just going to turn around in 10 months and throw stupid money to a guard. There's not a consistent line of thinking, at least for me. You don't have to agree. It's fine. But I'm the one with the sports talk show, and you have elected to listen. So I'm going to tell you my opinion. One more call, then we're going to take a break. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Ridge Runner, Mark. How we doing?
Ridge Runner. I'm well.
So, talking about the cornerback they signed today, I really like it from this point of view.
Okay.
If we need a better pass rush, and we can't, move up, like you said, move up in the draft, get a bona fide first rounder, or we can't find a free agency, a home run hit, which, that's a crapshoot anyways, whatever. Why not have good cornerbacks on the back end that can give us more quote-unquote coverage stack to bolster who we have as edge rushers and rushers and give them more opportunities? Now, they got to go out and make plays. But if we give them more opportunities where the quarterback doesn't have his first, second, or third read because the corners are so good and doing so well cohesively as a team,
sure,
is that not sort of like bringing in an edge rusher?
No,
and maybe our first round pick is somebody.
It'll help, but you know what helps the pass rush? Bringing in a pass rusher. You know what I mean? And I'm not trying to shoot down your point. If the Packers were that concerned about pass rush, just add to the pass rush. Don't fix A to affect C, which should hopefully fix B. You know what I mean? Yeah. And part of it is, who's available and where you're drafting, of course.
Yeah. I would say you also don't know how these guys are going to do in year 2 of Hafley's offense. Or defense, I'm sorry. They could actually take a huge leap because now they know the defense that much more. I don't know, but that's certainly something we could, rose-colored glasses, hang our hats on. I don't know.
Yeah. No, and I think, look, I'm a little sick of the roundabout thinking, and it's not you, Ridge Runner, Mark. I got a couple tweets earlier where it's like, well, they're paying, what's his face? Aaron Banks. Is that his name? Aaron Banks. And I'm glad I made a graphic because I can't remember the guy's name. Aaron Banks. Well, they paid Aaron Banks because now they don't have to overpay Rashid Walker. It's like, so you overpaid a guard to avoid overpaying a tackle. Wouldn't be my first strategy. Wouldn't be my given strategy. I also have heard from more than one person, just a little murmur, little, nothing too crazy, just a little hint. And Schneidman doesn't need to come out on the internet and, slam the door and tell me that I'm wrong. It's just something that I heard, that maybe the Packers are looking to trade Rashid Walker instead of extend him. Maybe to a team like Cincy. I don't know. That would make sense. Maybe the Packers address their pass rush that way. And maybe all of a sudden Trey Hendrickson is here and he gets extended. And then everyone's like, oh, Grant, what do you think now? No, I think different because they address the biggest need on the team instead of guard. They have plenty of O-linemen. They've been an O-line factory since the day I was born. Corner, okay, you need a body. I thought they could have probably done fine with the draft, but okay, if they want to sign a mid-price free agent, that's fine too. One more call and then we'll take a break. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Grant, some people are obsessed with trains to an unhealthy extent. I'm obsessed with fact-checking Packers reporters.
You're not. You don't need to lose your mind over this. This was not the point of the soundbite, but go ahead. You have 30, 60 seconds.
What they're saying. Yep, okay. Carrington Valentine, Corey Valentine, Eric Stokes, Jonathan Owens, and Rudy Ford. Grant, how many of those players are starting for the Packers in 2025?
This upcoming year?
2 of them, I think, right?
Yeah, Nixon
and Valentine. So for Ryan Wood to say, oh, this group is growing after they allowed Baker Mayfield a perfect... No, man. Half the defensive back was injured in that game. It's so dishonest, and the Packers beat. All I want is honesty. All I want is truth. Tell Packer fans the truth, man. That entire defensive back room is either going to be a backup or they're not on the roster.
I don't care what they were last year compared to this year. I don't care about the Jeff Hafley effect. The point of playing that soundbite from Ryan Wood is I think they're mostly fine at corner. And I think you agree with that because I think you, like me, realized that the defense was a lot better than most fans would think. And the defense is in a lot less need of drastic overhaul changes than most people think. That's the point of the cut. You would agree with that, Vagabond John, right? I think we're barking up the same tree here.
I agree with that. It's just a dishonest way of presenting information just to get Packer fans like, yeah, it's on Jeff Hafley. I still have questions about Jeff Hafley. I don't have that many questions about the talent.
That's fine.
I'm still I'm excited for it.
That's fine. Go nuts. You fight that battle. I'm just not going to fight it today. It was just a soundbite from Ryan Wood. I like playing soundbites coming back from breaks. Gets us into the topic, gets us all fired up before the bumper music even starts. Let's take a couple minutes. We'll come back, continue the show. I'll take your calls right up until 6 o'clock. Busy day for the Packers. They give a pile of money to a guard, Aaron Banks, and they give a reasonable amount of money to Nate Hobbs, a versatile corner from Las Vegas, which I like a little bit more than giving big money to a guard. And we'll keep talking about it next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Yeah, I think, again, and things change so much, but I think the one thing, we were very explosive at times last year. We had a very explosive football team, and that's important to us. We want to stay that way. But I thought there were times when we needed to control the football game. We weren't able to control the football game, whether that was through the passing game, the run game. We just weren't able to control the football game. Again, very explosive, and I think we were a threat every time we were out there. But I think we got to get to a point in situational football where we can control football games, and that'll be important moving forward.
Correct. That's Brian Gutekunst. More audio from the Combine and picking back through what he had to say about certain things, like the way he builds an O-lineman. Jermaine today, given they just gave a pile of money to a guard, which I don't really love if you haven't picked up on that by this point of the show. You haven't been listening very closely. I don't like giving a guard a ton of money, even if the guard is like an all-time great guard. I'm trying to think of the best guards of this era. I don't even like paying them a ton of money because the Packers have shown that they can find those guys and bring them along and find depth and move guys around the line. So why do I need to pay a premium for it? That's for other teams to do. Paying a premium for linemen, that's for teams who can't develop linemen. It's like paying a lot for relievers. Sucks to suck if you can't develop them. You're paying $6 million a year for... Who did the Cubs have last year? I can't even remember. It's because he sucked. It's because relievers are fluky and they're a dime a dozen. I believe, to a degree, like interior linemen. So I've been picking through all of this, Goody audio. That was Brian Gutekunst talking about why they were inconsistent in the pass game, better in the run game, right? Why did those things come to pass in 2024? And that was his explanation. They couldn't control football games, meaning when we need to put together a drive to end the game, we can't do it. When we need to mount a drive through the air to win a game, we can't do it. They could not control the game like they needed to. So what do Packers fans do? We blame the defense because the defense can't get the stop at the end of the game that's needed, even though the defense up until that point had only surrendered 13 points, right? And this is why I think Vagabond John has fought the battle that he's fought for so long, even though he takes it to weird lengths that aren't needed, at least not today. I tweeted earlier this afternoon, and you can find me on Twitter at Wisco Grant. Twitter's back and running. I'd use a combination of Blue Sky and then watching ESPN today to get news during Bill's show, which was fine. It's nice that there's a backup when Twitter goes down, and it's nice that Twitter exists. If Blue Sky ever goes down, it's not a political thing. Be on whatever app you want. I don't care. That's why I'm on both. So people who follow the show are on one or the other. I can post content for both, or at least I try. I tweeted 2 hours ago when it kind of became clear that the Packers weren't going to get one of these top wide receiver options, and when it became clear that they weren't really in on any of these elite edge rushing options, Milton Williams, Josh Sweat, DJ Reed. Now, maybe they swing a big trade for Trey Hendrickson, and if that happens, then we are so back, and the tone of this show will change very much tomorrow or Wednesday or whenever that deal would come to pass. But I tweeted when it was clear that the Packers weren't really going to swing one of these big moves that we'd been hopeful for. And I tweeted at 3:24 p.m. I tweeted, actually, that's the wrong tweet. I was about to read the wrong tweet. These are my words, and I'm going to get them wrong. I tweeted 3 hours ago, 1:48. The Packers better hope and pray that Jordan Love is a lot better and more consistent than he showed in 2025. And I got a lot of angry Packers fans in my mentions. Let me read you some. This is from Jesse Corbin. It says, WTF? The quarterback can only do so much with the receivers not being able to get separation while also having the highest drop rate in the league. One and done guard replied, he won't be unless they give him better receivers. Todd says, top 3 drop rate plus injury. I highly doubt that they are that concerned. You guys, that's my point. My point is, you guys, if you're not going to go get a stud number 1 wide receiver, or you're not really going to beef up the pass rush with any player of consequence, then you better hope and pray Jordan Love is ridiculously good. Because if he's just the player we saw last year, then they're not going to win enough games. They're going to lose to the Vikings and the Lions, and they're going to lose in the first or second round of the playoffs to a team like the Eagles or a team like the Commanders. Commanders got a lot better today. They made a couple big-time moves. Like, my point is not Jordan Love sucks and he better start playing better. My point is, look, if you're not going to go get Jordan Love some help, And you're not going to, make a nasty addition on the edge. Like, this is not the Aaron Rodgers Packers. These are not the Aaron Rodgers years where the front office can say, okay, well, we have an all-time great at quarterback, so we can get by there. Or we can do okay at that position because Aaron will make it good. That's not Jordan Love, man. Like, he needs a little bit more help. So, yeah, I'm not super comfortable with the wide receiving core going into week 1 being Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks, Tucker Kraft, and Jaden Reed. And I like all those players just fine. But what if we get into next year and it's clear that Wicks still can't catch the ball and Reed still struggles with drops? Well, then you're effed. You're effed because you have nothing else. Christian Watson, when Christian Watson comes back, okay. You ever step on any rakes? Well, when Christian Watson gets back, okay. Have you ever thought that you want a free trip on a cruise because you got a phone call? Because those are the types of people who are like, well, when Christian Watson comes back, it'll all be fine. Yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah, I bet. Yeah, I'll hold my breath until that happens. Like, if you go into next year with no meaningful addition at wide receiver and Wick still isn't good enough and Jaden Reed hasn't taken a leap from being a really nice player to a star, borderline star, you're cooked. You're not good enough. Because you're going up against teams like the Lions and the Vikings who have weapons in spades, or teams like the Eagles or the Commanders, or now the Rams who have weapons in spades. And that's assuming that the Niners don't figure it out. And I kind of think they might because they still got a lot of talent. So I just think the Packers not adding a wide receiver of consequence, at least a high-level one of the big-time targets we've been talking about, they could draft someone. Okay. Who was the last wide receiver we were all convinced was going to be an impact player on day one? It was Amari Rodgers, who sucked. Okay. So, now if they spend that 23rd overall pick on a wide receiver, okay, I guess I get the shape of it a little bit more. We're not just adding a wide receiver in the draft. We're adding the likes of a wide receiver we haven't added in a long time in the draft because we're committing a draft pick, the likes of which we haven't committed in forever in the draft. Okay, sure. The draft is just a ways away. And I'm not going to sit here and be like, I'm not going to react strongly until we see what they do in the draft. There's a live show tonight at 4:00, so we're going to talk about what's going on now. And I'm worried about the wide receiving room. I still have a ton of belief and excitement for what Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks specifically can do. I don't know about Romeo Doubs with the concussions. I don't know, man. He just didn't show up for practice last year. Am I supposed to forget that? Well, you didn't know the whole story. There must have been more going on. Exactly! Yeah! Which is why I'm a little worried. So I still have a lot of faith, specifically in Wicks and Reed, or maybe faith is the wrong word, but excitement and hope. But this is year 3 of the year 3 plan. This is the offseason that Brian Gutekunst said, hey, it's time to compete for championships. It's time to do that thing.
It's time that we start competing for championships.
His words, not mine. It's time to up our sense of urgency. So I don't know. If they draft a wide receiver in the first round, or we come in tomorrow and the Packers have added a wide receiver of consequence in free agency or via a trade, well, then it looks a little bit different. But those things haven't happened yet. And I'm not gonna wait to react until, what do you want me to wait until week 1? Well, we don't know. We got to wait. Okay, you know what, guys? Then we just won't talk Packers until week 1. Of course, we're going to talk about what happened today. We're going to react to what happened today. And I just think there are a couple sandwiches. One specific, very good sandwich short of a picnic at wide receiver. This text says, hey, Grant, what do you think of getting Kupp for a 7th or trying for Garrett Wilson for a first rounder? Also, these free agent signings, how much more cap space do they have? They still have plenty of money. I saw Ken Ingles tweeting about this, especially if they extend guys like they're not done. They don't have to be done. Josh and Cornell says, on the O-line, I would say that the Packers were fairly healthy last year, and you can't always count on that. Secondly, as they say, if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. Sure. Okay, but now Jacob Monk's a year older, and I thought people really liked Jacob Monk in training camp last year. Jordan Morgan should be back in the fold. Do we also need to go give $80 million to a guard? Probably not. At least that's my opinion. Duncan Holman says, I'm just glad nobody illegally tampered. Yeah, right. Thank you for the text, guys. 608-321-1670. I'm going to break just a minute or two earlier than I normally would to give us some time on the back end for the Monday mailbag and any more concerns. GrantBills21@gmail.com. I almost forgot about it because of the big news of the day. But if you have any questions, please submit them. I will address them next. Final segment, GrantBills21@gmail.com.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Because the mail never stops.
Charles, I've been writing to you.
Ah, She's Got Mail. That's the name of the movie.
That's it, honey. There's never a let-up. It's relentless. Every day it piles up more and more and more, and you got to get it up. And the more you get up, the more it keeps coming in.
The Monday Mailbag. Appreciate your questions. As always, they can be sports-related, but that's what the rest of the show is for. So if it's a sports-related question, try to make it fun. Try to not just make it a continuation of the last 2 hours, because then what's the point? Right? Question from Michael. It says, hi, Grant. Hi, Michael. Now that inland game fish season has ended, it's trout and panfish until the walleye run on some local rivers and bass once the water warms up. Can't wait. Do you have any fishing trips planned this year? Yes, I do. A couple to the Viroqua area in the next 2 months. And then the big trip I normally do in August or late July with a buddy. Been going to Montana since like 2017 once a year. Rivers that I will hit if you enjoy Googling such things. This year, we're looking to really, really blow it up big time. We're looking to hit. So I normally fish the Madison. I like the Ruby. This is Southwest Montana. Try to hit Rock Creek this year. That's up towards Missoula for the first time in a couple summers. And I've never fished the Missouri. I would really like to hit that one this summer. So I'm planning as we speak. Tyler in Mass. 2 questions. Should daylight savings be abolished or stay the way that it is? It should stay the way that it is. This seems to be a good system. It gets lighter earlier in the day in the winter. Don't need the light later. Longer days in the summer. It's fine. I can change the clocks twice a year. It's not that hard. Yeah, I miss 1 hour of sleep or I get an extra hour of sleep and I need to change the clock on the stove. The amount of people in this country who are like, I'm sick of changing the clock. That's what you're hung up on? Changing clocks? That's what you can't get over? I don't mean to judge you, but come on. Number 2, Governor Tony Evers officially, that's clever, declared last Friday as Fish Fry Friday in the state of Wisconsin. What's your favorite place to go for a fish fry? Well, I don't like giving out free advertisement. Flip side, first and foremost, and I'm excited to go there in a month or 2, and I'll be back for some live shows in La Crosse. I also really enjoy the Phoenix in Heartland and Jake's Supper Club north of Menominee. All excellent options. Around the state, some different areas too. Grant, if you could only take one, would it be the Great River Road or Coastal, by the way, for a road trip? Well, Great River Road. I know what you're asking there, but that's a very loose framework for a question. Great River Road rules. Let's see here. Josh in Menominee says, down the road, if you were to do your show from a basement studio, what city would you pick to live? Assume it would be helpful to be in the southern part of the state, Milwaukee area, Madison area, maybe La Crosse. What would be your favorite city to live for a long time, forever home? Look, if I had no obligations, work, significant other, family, I would live in Westby so fast, and I would not think about it twice. Maybe not directly in Westby. Somewhere outside Westby. I actually know exactly where I'd live, but I don't like advertising it because I don't want more people to go there. This is from Cheese. Honest question. Is Marquette the only Wisco team that you don't like, and why do you feel that way about MU? They're a rival to Wisconsin. Screw them, that's why. I don't know. A lot of Chicago kids. It's fun. It's fun to have a team that you're pulling against. Mike in Colorado says, have you ever been to El Paso or San Antonio? Guess where I'm at now? El Paso, first time. San Antonio on Wednesday. Yeehaw. I've never been to Texas. Well, I had a layover in Dallas-Fort Worth, so I guess now I've been to Texas. So that's not really, you never leave the airport. It doesn't really count. If I were to go to Texas, I would want to go, and I think this has come up on the show, I would want to go southwest on the border of Mexico. I would want to feel like I'm in a Marty Robbins song. I don't need to go to Austin. San Antonio would be cool because the Riverwalk would be cool, but like I want to go to El Paso. Like I want to feel like I'm in a Marty Robbins song. A big part of why I like traveling is like, ooh, I would like to listen to this song there. I would like to wear that. Like I want to go. Like I want to go, just wrap myself in a different feeling place. So, El Paso, I think. We got time to take a call. Those are all the questions. Light mailbag today, but that's fine because we had breaking Packers news. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Kevin?
Kevin. What's up, Kevin?
I'm a longtime lacrosse resident, and you're too young to know this, but the free agent that the Packers took a long, long time ago, which was the best, was what?
So I have a name that I'm thinking, but I don't want to be embarrassed to be wrong. Can you just tell me and I'll tell you? Will you trust me if I tell you that I got it right?
I would say Reggie White.
Oh, I thought it was going to be one with a lacrosse connection. Okay, well, yeah, probably
No.
Reggie White is he's the correct answer then, yeah.
Reggie White. And do you also remember who the Packers missed on when Barry Sanders was available in the draft?
Mandrich?
Yep.
Excellent,
Tony,
Kevin.
I want to be a Mandrich.
Kevin, I'm sorry I got to run, but the show's over. Sorry I waited a little long to bring you on. Thanks for listening to Lacrosse. Back tomorrow at 4.